Let me know when I can start.
Inshallah, you can start. We're live.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, nahmadu wa nusalli ala rasulih al-kareem. Amma ba'd. Inshallah, in today's session, which is a continuation of the last week's session of Usul al-Fiqh, today we'll talk about what is Sharia and what is Hukum Sharii and the types of Hukum Sharii, inshallah. And we'll see that within the next 45 minutes, how much we can cover. Probably I will only cover one of the two types of the Hukum Sharii. If time permits, we'll talk about both, inshallah. So when it comes to Sharia, linguistically, Sharia means the non-exhaustive source of water with which people satisfy their thirst. And from this linguistic significance, Sharia is that the Islamic laws are effectively a source of guidance. As water is fundamental basis of life, the Islamic laws are an essential source for guiding human life. So that's pretty much the definition of the Sharia, what the Sharia means. And also, Sharia is composed of all the laws derived from the legislative sources of Islam. As we talked about it last week, Sharia is also a synonym for the word fiqh. And it includes all the actions that, anything that we do in our life, the Sharia gives the rulings regarding everything. Now, when it comes to Al-Hukum Sharii, the Usuliyin, which are the scholars of the Usul al-Fiqh, fundamentals of the understanding of the deen, scholars have defined Al-Hukm Sharii as هو خطاب الشارع المتعلق بأفعال العباد بالاقتداء أو التخيير أو بالوضع. We will find some variations sometimes, some of them instead of saying خطاب الشارع as خطاب الله, Allah Ta'ala, and instead of بالمتعلق بأفعال العباد, instead of عباد it says بأفعال المكلفين. Same meaning, does not change much. What it means by that, the translation or just some of the closest meaning of this definition of Al-Hukm Sharii is the address of the Shari'. Shari' means the legislator, which is Allah Azza wa Jal. That's why, as I've said, some of the definitions would, instead of saying a Shari', they will say Allah Ta'ala. So, Khitab Shari', the address of the legislator, which is Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, regarding the actions of his slaves, ibad, or the mukallafin, meaning the one who are responsible for the address of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Bil iqtada, meaning demanding them to do or not to do something. Aw al takhyir. Takhyir means or given the choice, option of either way, it is allowed to do an action. Aw bil wada'. Bil wada' means that declaring a thing to be the cause, so it could be a cause, a sabab, or a shart, a condition, impediment, a mani', rukhsa, or azima, which means a commanded action or the permissibility of an action. And it could be valid, invalid, or void, which is batil, fasid, and sahih. Now, so wada' is the declaration or the circumstantial rulings. Now, when we are talking about Hukm Sharii, it is important for us to understand that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala provides us ruling about all our actions. Hence, we are accountable for all the actions that we undertake in this life. Since we are accountable for the actions, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has given us the rulings for all the actions as well. Meaning, for every action as a human beings that as Muslims we undertake, we have to know what Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala wants from us for that specific action. And there are many evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that dictates that Hukum Sharii is needed, meaning the legal ruling from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is required for every action that we undertake. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hijr, فَوَرَبِّكَ لَنَسْأَلَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. So by your Lord, by your Rabb, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we shall certainly call all of them to account about what they used to do. So it means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold us accountable for all the things that we used to do in our lives. So this accountability actually gives us a sign regarding we require a Hukum Sharii or legal ruling from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our actions. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not hold us accountable for all our actions. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Yunus as well, وَمَا تَكُونُوا فِي شَأْنٍ وَمَا تَتْلُوا مِنْهُ مِنْ قُرْآنٍ وَلَا تَعْمَلُونَ مِنْ عَمَلٍ إِلَّا كُنَّ عَلَيْكُمْ شُهُودًا إِذْ تُفِيدُونَ فِيهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whatever you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may be doing, and whatever portion you may be reciting from the Quran, and whatever deed you, mankind, may be doing, good or evil, we are witness, therefore, when you are doing it. So what it means that by that is, first of all, it started off with addressing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then it goes to the whole mankind as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is over here is telling us that He will hold us accountable for whatever deeds that we are doing. And I will not go into all the proofs regarding this. This is a well-known rule in the Sharia that we need a Hukum Sharii for every action that we undertake. So before we act upon an action, we need a Hukum of Allah Azza wa Jal, al-Hukm Sharii. There are many ahadith on the subject as well. So I'll just mention some of the ahadith as I mentioned some of the ayat. I did not go into the detail of all the ayat. The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned in one of the hadith reported by Imam Bukhari in his Sahih, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, وَلَيْسَ لَنَا نِسَاءٌ actually it says, it is reported by Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said, قَالَ كُنَّا نَغْزُو مَعَ نَبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم وَلَيْسَ لَنَا نِسَاءٌ. That Ibn Mas'ud, he says that we used to go to the ghazawat with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we did not have women with us. فَقُلْنَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, and we said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أَلَا نَسْتَخْصِي فَنَهَانَ عَنْ ذَلِكَ, that we asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, should we castrate ourselves? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited it. Meaning, for any action the Sahaba used to undertake, they used to ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam if they were not aware of ruling from Islam first. Similarly, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked by another report by Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu an, and قال رد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على عثمان بن مذعون التبتل ولو أذن له لاختصينا. Meaning, Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas said, reported that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam rejected the idea of Uthman bin Maz'un living in celibacy. And if he, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had given me permission, we would have gotten ourselves castrated. Again, this hadith is reported by Sahih Muslim. And same thing, that when he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about an action that he was going to do, the action was rejected. Another hadith reported by Aisha radiallahu anha that reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, any action which is not from the Sharia of Islam, that action is rejected. Okay, so that's what's about the Hukum Sharii. Now, that is required for every action that we undertake. Okay. Now, when it comes to the types of the Hukum Sharii, Hukum Sharii has two types. One is called Al-Hukum Al-Taklifi, and the other is called Al-Hukum Al-Wada'i. The definition of Hukum Al-Taklifi is the demand of the Shari', again, requiring the subject to perform or omit, or to have a choice between commission or omission. So now here, this is the first part of the definition that we talked about the Hukum Sharii, which is bil-iqtida wa takhyir, which is whether we are ordered to do something. So there's a talab, there's a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is either requiring us to do an action or not to do an action. And the other part of that is there's a choice given to us. So doing or not doing, either way is okay, is allowed in Islam. So these are the actions, and we'll talk about their further categorization of Hukum al-Taklifi, are referred as Hukum Taklifi. Now, al-Hukum al-Wada'i is the communication from the lawgiver or the Shari', Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, related to the acts of the subjects in manner that is declaratory, meaning it declares an action required. So Hukum Taklifi, that organizes the actions of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, actions of the human of Muslims, of the human beings. And Hukum al-Wada'i, what it does is it organizes the Hukum al-Taklifi. And we'll see when we define furthermore what it means by that. I'll see if I can, inshallah, share this. It'll be probably easier for the people to see. Let me see if I can share this. Okay, I cannot share. So brother who is the hostess, he may have to give me the permissions to share. See if I can share now. Okay. I hope that you can see my screen now. Let me know if you cannot. Brother, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So when it comes to the types of al-Hukum al-Taklifi, there are 5 types of Hukum al-Taklifi. The first one is Fard or Wajib. And in general, according to Shafi'i, Imam Shafi'i, or Imam Malik, or Ahmad bin Hanbal, they consider Fard and Wajib as same category, while Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, he considers Wajib as a separate category than the Fard. And I will explain a little bit more further down. And then the second category, so Fard and Wajib means obligatory, or something that is required from the Mukallaf. Mukallaf means the one who is responsible, accountable for an action. And Mukallaf actually has a definition. It means a person who is baligh, he is mature, he is aqil, he is sane, and he is capable of doing an action. Now, second type of al-Hukum al-Taklifi is haram, which is prohibited. It also can be considered as al-haram or al-mahdur. And the third category, which is mandub, sunnah, nafila, similar meaning, and it means recommended action. Fourth category is makruh, disliked action. And again, here makruh also, for Imam Abu Hanifa, he defines makruh as further into 2 more categories. When it comes to Imam Ahmad, Shafi'i, and Malik, they have 1 category makruh, while Imam Abu Hanifa divides makruh further into 2 categories. One is called makruh tahrimi, and the other one is called makruh tanzihi. Okay, so when it comes to fard,
can you put this in a presentation mode so that people can see it better?
Oh, you cannot see it right now?
No, I mean, they can see it, but it's small. If you can put it in presentation mode.
Let me make it bigger. How about this? Is it better? Or just put it in presentation mode?
Presentation mode is better.
Okay. Is it better?
Yeah, much better. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, so let me go back to the previous slide. So in case it was not clear, so these are the 5 categories that we were talking about. So I'm not sure if, because the thing is right now, my Zoom thing is covering up my slide. Is that, can you see the whole slide, or it is covered with something?
No, the whole thing, whole thing.
It's okay. Okay, that's fine. So again, these are the 5 types of al-hukm taklifi, and which is for the wajib, which is obligatory, haram, prohibited, and then mandub, sunnah, and nafila, which means the recommended action, makruh is disliked, and mubah is permissible action. Now, when it comes to fard or wajib, the definition of fard and wajib and all these actions are actually connected with 2 things to think of it. If and this action will lead to reward or punishment, okay, which is iqab or thawab from Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, if the request to do an action, which is a talab, to do an action is jazim. Talab is jazim. Jazim means it is decisive. Then it is a fard or a wajib. And as I mentioned, both have the same meaning according to Imam Shafi'i, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad. While Abu Hanifa has a different category of wajib of its own. So he takes fard as whatever is defined as fard and wajib by other scholars, but he also defines wajib as another category, which is a category in between fard and the sunnah. And that goes back to the issue of whether the evidences which are used for finding the hukum or categorizing the hukum has qat'i dalala and qat'i thubut, which means definite. It has a definite proof and a definite meaning. Then it is considered as a fard by Imam Abu Hanifa. But if the meaning is dhanni, it is not decisive, then Imam Abu Hanifa considered that as wajib. While in the case of other A'immah, they look at as wajib and fard in the same meaning. Now, some of the examples of the fard or wajib is we know the performing the 5 prayers, daily prayers, and paying the zakah on the person who has the specific amount of wealth for the period of their time, for the whole year, and participating in, for example, participation in the jihad, being ruled by Islam, or Muslim women wearing the hijab. These are the obligatory actions which are fard, which means that if a person complies by that, if he does that, he gets the hasanat, he gets the reward for that. And if he disobeys that, he can be punished for the action not performed because he is missing an obligation from Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, the second category of al-hukm al-taklifi is haram. If the instruction or the talab, again, see, every time we use the word talab means this is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And talab is coming from the sources of Islam, which are Quran and the Sunnah. And of course, the other sources of the Islam are the Ijma' al-Sahaba and the Qiyas. And we will talk about that later on as well, each category. But even Ijma' Sahaba and Qiyas, they go back to the Quran and Sunnah, which are the sources for us to follow. So when we say talab from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is coming in the form of through the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, if that talab is actually for tark of an action, meaning it's coming for nahi or to not to do an action, and if it is decisive, it's jazim. If it's decisive to refrain from an action, then it is haram or mahdhur. If the person, if the haram is committed, then the person can be punished. But if haram is avoided, the person will be rewarded for not committing the haram. Now, examples of haram are, there are many examples out there, and like, for example, dealing with riba, or doing gambling, promoting nationalism or democracy. These are the clear haram which are mentioned from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So today, in today's talk, I am not going into the detail of how to look at the ayat and the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and look at the qarina, which is the indicator that tells you that how a talab, which is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is asking us to not to do an action, for example, or prohibits an action. Then how do we distinguish that prohibition really means a haram prohibition, it means, or it is just a dislike, which means a makruh, which will the next thing that we'll talk about. And same thing that goes about the action which is commanded for us to be done by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether that is an obligation or it is just a recommendation. And for that, it is important to understand the text of the Quran and Sunnah, and there are ways to look at it, and for that a person has to be well equipped to extract the ruling from that. Okay, so that's about the haram. Now, mandub, sunnah, nafilah, these are the terms are used for recommended actions. All of them have the similar meaning. The definition of the sunnah is an instruction to do an action is if the action, again the talab, the command comes in a form which is not decisive, which is not, or in other words, is ghair jazim, it's not decisive, then it is considered mandub. And the one who acts on it, he's praised and he will be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if a person does not fulfill an action which is mandub or sunnah or nafilah, then he's not punished for that. He's not blameworthy for not doing an action. For example, in Islam, it is a recommended action to do the iyadah. If a person is sick, you go and visit him, give sadaqah besides the zakah, which is an obligation on the person who has the nisab. But besides that, the person who voluntarily gives more to the poor besides the zakah, it is an act of ibadah, and it is considered as a sunnah action. And similarly, when it comes to fasting on Mondays and Thursdays, this is considered as a sunnah or nafilah action. Now, the fourth category is called al-makruh or makruh, and the definition is if the command which has come, and that command is or the talab is ghair jazim. Ghair jazim means here that it is an action which is not, it is a command which is not decisive regarding the action which was prohibited or was ordered to tark. Tark means to leave the action. Then if it is not decisive, then it is considered as makruh. And the one who stays away from it, because he's staying away from it, considering it the command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he get the reward for staying away from it. But even though it is not decisively said it's not allowed, meaning it's not haram, then the one who does it, he is not punished or blamed. But if he does not, if stays away from it, then he is rewarded for that. For example, we know that performing the salah between Fajr salah and sunrise, it is prohibited. What it means by that, it is makruh. It is not haram to pray, but it is makruh. Or eating garlic before going to the masjid for salah. So because the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibits to come to the masjid while you have eaten garlic or onions. But it is not considered as haram because the ruling that has come is not decisive. Now the fifth category is called mubah, and mubah is if the choice is to do or not to do an action is given, meaning that the choice is given up to us, that a person can do an action or not do an action. Either way, he is neither rewarded nor punished. In that case, for example, examples are like eating. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so Allah has said to eat from the tayyibat. Now, the tayyibat does not mean that now we have to eat all the time. It is allowed for us, choice is given to us between all the tayyibat, whichever one we like, we can eat from them. And or even a person is allowed to marry up to 4 wives, for example. This is permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these actions are considered as mubah actions, and we are permitted. It is permissible from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are not rewarded. We are not punished for these actions. Let me just show this in a chart form, so maybe it'll be easier to understand. Brother, tell me if you can see that or not. Can you see this chart?
No.
Yes or no? You cannot.
No.
Okay,
No.
I think probably I have to share that as well separately. Okay. So let me pause this. Now you cannot see anything, right?
No.
Share the screen. And how about now? So now you can see it, inshallah.
Not yet. Just your beautiful face. It's
okay.
coming up. There we go.
Okay, I think you should be able to see this now, right? The chart?
Yes, we can see it now. Yes.
So it may be a little bit small, I'm not sure, but this is the biggest I can go right now. I can make it bigger, probably, maybe. Okay, so it says Hukum Sharii, for example, what we were talking about at the beginning. You can divide them into 2 categories. One is taklifi and the other is wada'i. And when it comes to taklifi, that's the only part that we have talked about today, that it is the khitab, as I said, khitab Allah Ta'ala or khitab al-sha'r al-muta'alliq bi af'al al-mukallafin or bi af'al al-ibad. So here it says that it is the legislation, it is the address of the legislator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regarding the actions of the mukallafin, the one who are responsible to do or not to do an action, or the choice is given. So now within that, we talked about that al-iqtida is of 2 types, which is the action of omission or to do an action, for permission or omission. So, or to do one was to do an action, and other one was to not to do an action, which is the talab fa'al and talab tark. And from the fa'al, to do it, if it's jazim, then it comes under the wajib. If it's ghair jazim, then it comes under sunnah. And when it comes to the tark, or if the action is to not to do an action, then if the hukum is jazim, al-jazm, then it's tahrim, meaning it's haram to do an action. And if it's laysa ala sabil al-jazm or ghair jazim, then it is considered as karaha, or it is makruh. So these are the 4 types that comes from the iqtida, meaning the omission and order, command to do some action. And now when the action is given a takhyir, meaning given the choice between the fa'al or the tark, meaning to do an action or not to do an action. Either way, it is allowed. So ibaha or is there, or action is mubah to do over here. So that action is considered as halal either way, whether we do an action or not to do an action. So I think, because the thing is there are too many terminologies that I have thrown at you guys, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause here. And if there are any questions about the subject that is covered so far, I'd like to address those questions first. And if the time permits, then we will go to the other part of it, which is hukum wada'. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slide, so it will be easier for you to remember what was discussed, inshallah. Okay, any questions so far?
Yes, there are a few. I'm going to paste them on the chat. So
okay.
Just give me a minute.
Okay. The reason I like to do this one is in a kind of a class mode. It is important that it is understood as well while I am talking about, because there are too many terms that we are using here, and there could be people, brothers and sisters, who may not be aware of those terminologies. Okay.
Just posted the first one.
Okay. Okay, can you please elaborate? If haram is avoided, the person will be rewarded. If a Muslim is walking in a store and he passes by a liquor section and does not touch it and buy it, will he be rewarded for that? It is more of an action that you are, so you are avoiding an action, meaning you are not committing a haram. You are in a state that you may end up doing an action, but you are avoiding it. You are not doing an action because it is haram from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It could be, could think of it this way, that you are in a situation where you are in a peer pressure of drinking, everybody's drinking, but you pull yourself out of the situation because it is haram from Allah Azza wa Jal. So you have, this is an act that can be rewarded from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah.
That is it. No other question.
Okay. One more point I like to make sure that we understand from here and don't leave with the incorrect impression regarding when we talk about this categorization. When we say, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to do something, and the talab, which is the command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to do an action, and the fuqaha, there's another question. I'll come to that question first. Let me continue on. So when the fuqaha have divided the actions in these categories, of course, those categories are coming from the way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam have shown to us, but the actions are categorized this way so we can prioritize our actions. That's the idea here, right? So we prioritize our actions in a way that if the fard needs to be done, at that time we would not engage ourselves into an action which may be recommended from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we lose the time when it is supposed to be done, the fard. So fard has to be done, and it should not be done at the it should not be avoided at the stake of an action which is a sunnah. But that does not mean that we are saying that sunnah means sunnah is an action that is, you get the hasanat if you do it, and if you don't do it, you don't get the hasanat. Does not mean that we should not be doing the actions which are recommended. We should be doing all the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us in a form of talab jazim, which is a decisive manner, which is an obligation, and try our best to do as much as sunnah actions or mandub actions as we can, so we can be rewarded more for the actions. And if we could not do it because whatsoever of our weakness, those sunnah actions, we are not punished for that, to know that. That's one part of it. And same thing goes for the haram. Of course, we absolutely stay away from haram as much as we can, inshallah. And when it comes to the makruh, even though the command is not to be involved in those actions, it's not decisive, hence it comes under the category of you're not punished for the action committing that which is prohibited, but you get hasanat for not performing the action that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded not to do. Now, again, it does not mean that we should be very relaxed in doing the actions which are makruhat, which are makruh from Allah Azza wa Jal. Rather, we try our best to stay away from as much as possible. That's the idea. Okay. Now, the second question is, okay. So the question is first, what's the difference between the kufr and haram? So kufr, we have to be careful about that term also. Sometimes it's used in a very loose manner. Haram is, first of all, haram is an action which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly, there's a decisive ruling that says that an action is prohibited. And so the talab is jazim. It is decisive. Hence, if an action is done, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can punish us for that action from us. Now, that's the haram. Now, when it comes to kufr, kufr can have kufr action can be one thing, and which means that there's a kufr haqiqi and there's the hukmi also. These are two different things. If a person is clearly rejecting any of the qat'i ahkam from Islam, for example, or we mean by any of the ayat from the Quran, for example, a person rejects, or any of the hadith mutawatir from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he rejects, then the person will be considered as a kafir, a person who has rejected Islam, and he will be out of the folds of Islam. Now, a person can, for example, another way of looking at it would be, we know that drinking is haram. When a Muslim, he drinks. Now, if he drinks, he has committed a haram, that he can be punished for the action that he committed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or if there is Islam is implemented somewhere as a way of life over there, then from the state that he can get the punishment for that action. Talking about the Muslim right here, right now. Not talking about a dhimmi, for example, who is allowed to drink in his house and all those things. That's not what we're talking about. So a Muslim we're talking about, because halal and haram concept is about the Muslims here. So when if a Muslim commits the haram, in that case, he can be punished. But if another Muslim and he drinks by saying that it is not haram in Islam, for example, or this ayah, he rejects the ayah from the Quran that it is haram. For example, the khamar is not haram, he says. Intoxicant is not haram. Then the person can be out of Islam. Now he is doing the act of kufr, and he can be out of Islam. Okay. Now, when it comes to democracy, is haram or kufr? Democracy is a system of kufr, meaning it is not a system of Islam. And if a person he thinks of it that democracy is better than Islam as a ruling system, then he's of course out of Islam. But if he is unknowingly, he's supporting it, he's not aware of it, that it's haram or something, or even if he is supporting it not in the sense of he thinks of it that it is better than Islam, or Islam and democracy are same things, then he is committing a haram in that case. Okay. Any questions or comments about the subject?
Nothing. So you can carry on the next subject.
Okay. Okay. Now, so now the other. Okay. Can you see this or no?
Yes.
Okay. So, there are 5 types of al-hukm al-wada'i, if you want to call it 5, or if you can think of it as 7 or 8, either way, it doesn't matter. But these are the kinds of al-hukm al-wada'i. The first one, which is called al-sabab, which is the cause, if you want to translate in English. Second is condition or shart, or al-mani' is impediment. Fourth kind is called commanded and permissible, azima and rukhsa. And the fifth one is as-saha wal-batlan wal-fasad, valid, invalid, and corrupted. I have to move to the other document because I was not able to complete the presentation. So let me move to the document. Just a second. so I can share that part with you, inshallah. I have to be more prepared, inshallah, next time. So it'll be one document instead of multiple documents. Okay. Share screen. And there you go, Word document. Okay. Can you see the Word document now?
Yeah, something popped up, but it was blank.
I'm not sure what's going on. Something is continuously popping up now. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So let me go back to this chart here. So now when it comes to حكم وضعي, this is هو خطاب الله تعالى أو خطاب الشارع للمكلفين أو للعباد بجعل الشيء سبب لفعل المكلف. So this is a sabab. First is sabab, second is shart, and then mana. And also we have saha, al-fasad, and there's also al-batlan also, and al-rukhsa and azima. So these are the categories that we talked about, and the definitions of these categories and examples are like that. A cause or a sabab is an act which al-hukm al-taklifi is invoked from, whose presence obliges hukm al-taklifi and absence necessitates no obligation of the hukm, basically. So if the sabab is there, then the hukm is, it obliges the hukm to be done. But if the sabab is not there, or cause is not there, then the ruling does not exist either. What I mean by that is this. We know that Salatul Zuhr, says 5 prayers, are obligatory on the Muslims. Salatul Zuhr is part of the 5 prayers. But the time for Salatul Dhuhr is when the Zawal happens, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala liduluk al-shams, establish prayer at the decline of the sun. And similarly, the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says, إِذَا زَالَتِ الشَّمْسُ فَصَلُّوا, that when the sun declines from its meridian or from the peak, then pray. That is about praying. The time for the Salatul Dhuhr has entered. And when, so this is the time or the decline of the sun is a sabab or the cause for the salah. Now is it is an obligation and needs to be done now. But if the sun has not declined, then the time for salah is not there, so salah is not obligatory there now. So that's what it means by the sabab. Now, when it comes to the shart or the condition, which is the prerequisite, and by the way, the other examples for that would be for the sabab is when for example, when the moon is sighted, then for Ramadan. Now then the time for the obligation of the Ramadan starts there, and of course that's obligation is within a specific time from dawn to dusk. But the sabab here is the sighting of the moon that causes the Ramadan to start, and the very same thing, the sighting of the moon, causes the end of Ramadan as well. So that's considered as the sabab. Now, or the cause. So the cause and effect. So the effect of that is, in the case of declining of the sun, the salah is obligation of salah is there. And similarly, sighting of the moon for the Ramadan is the beginning of the Ramadan, the beginning of the fasting, and ending of Ramadan or beginning of Shawwal is a sabab for ending of the month of Ramadan and ending of the fasting of the month of Ramadan. Now, when it comes to condition, which is the prerequisite, whose absence necessitates the absence of the hukm, hukm taklifi, but its presence does not obligate the hukm. So, for example, wudu is a shart for the salah. Now, if wudu is not there, then the salah cannot be performed. Okay, so it is a shart, it is a condition for the hukm taklifi, which is a salah in this case, that needs to be done. So it is but it is different than sabab. The difference between the shart and the sabab is that in the case of the sabab, if the sabab is there, then the obligation of hukum taklifi is there. Now, in the case of the condition shart, you can have the shart there. For example, you are in the state of the wudu. Just because you are in the state of the wudu, you cannot just pray Salatul Dhuhr at any time. Or the obligation of salah is there for you. So you can be in the state of wudu. But the absence of that, actually, that would negate the salah or hukum taklifi here. Third thing is called al-mani' or impediment. So this is actually the opposite of sabab. So if the existence of a situation is there, whatever the mani' is, then this will cease the hukum to exist. See, in the case of the sabab, when the sabab was there, that caused the obligation of the hukum to be there. In the case of impediment of the mani', when mani' is there, that will cease the hukum. So like, for example, in Islam, the killing, for example, if somebody kills somebody and he is the inheritor from that person, then it will become an impediment for him, meaning he will not be able to inherit from the person who a person has killed. In the case, for example, a son is supposed to inherit from his father if the father passes away. But if the son has killed his father, in that case, now there's a mana', there's an impediment for the hukum to be executed, which is to give from the inheritance to the son. And that will cease to exist because of the action committed by the son. Now, azima and the rukhsa. The azima is in general, the hukum is there. There's a command from the shara for a Muslim to perform. Okay, so that's a normal, but there's a situation that comes up, and it gives the person a permission to not to do the command that was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, for example, one of the things is, that's an example of the rukhsa itself. If a person is traveling in the month of Ramadan and he's fasting, he has the rukhsa, he has the permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not to fast, for example. Okay. Now, in the case of the azima, the original hukum is to do an action. Like the famous example, if you remember the example of when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent two Sahaba to Musaylama Kadhab. And Musaylama Kadhab, he killed one of the Sahaba. Actually, he commanded both of them to accept him as the messenger of Allah as well, beside Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a false prophet in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the Sahabi, he rejected it. And Musaylama Kadhab, la'natullah alayhi, he killed the Sahabi. And the other one, to save his life, to protect his life, he basically said that he believed in Musaylama, and he was able to save his life, which is there's a rukhsa in Islam. It is allowed in Islam to lie in that situation to save your life. So he took the rukhsa, while the one who was killed with the original hukum of rejecting anybody else as a prophet, to reject the false prophets. So he rejected the one who rejected and killed by Musaylama Kadhab, la'natullah alayh, he was doing the action of azima. Okay. Now the last category I want to talk about is which is asaha or batlan or fasad, or the action which is sahih, which is correct according to the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded. For example, sales transactions that fulfills all the basic principles and conditions that sales is considered, then that sales is considered as a valid or a sah. So that will be considered as correct sale from the Islamic perspective. Now, a batil, invalid, when an action is done and a basic principle of rukun is not fulfilled, then that action will be considered as invalid from the Islamic perspective, and it will be considered as it is a haram to do the action, and it will be considered as the action did not never complete. The contract was not valid. So, for example, if a marriage is done without two required witnesses, the marriage contract, then this contract is considered as invalid, and it will be as if the marriage has never happened, and if the man and the woman who thought of them, they are married and they committed, they live as husband and wife, and they act as husband and wife, then they would be they would have committed a sin there. Now, the last within that category is a corrupted or fasad, or an action which is a fasid action. When an action is done with all the principle or the arkan are done, but there are certain conditions are missing. So similarly, the example of the marriage, for example, if a marriage contract is done, all the arkan are done, which are to have two witnesses, to have the ijab or qabul, which is offering an acceptance from the bride and the groom, and two witnesses are there, and the father of the bride, his consent was also there. But they forgot to mention the mahar, for example. And then in that case, that contract is considered as fasid, meaning it has corruption in it, but it is valid in the sense of that can be fixed. It's fixable contract. So contract happened, but it has some corruption in it. And in this example, for example, if the dowry was not mentioned, mahar was not mentioned, then there's a thing called mahar mithal will be given to the bride. Mahar mithal means the dowry which is given to a girl of the bride's stature, whatever normal mahar was given to the girl like her, that would be given to her in that case. Now it would not be like there's a back and forth going on between the bride and the groom or the families, that what should be the mahar after this contract has happened. In that case, that will be fixed by another rule, which is mahar mithal, and the dowry of similar dowry will be paid to her. So we'll stop here today, and inshallah next week we'll continue on from here. But I'd like to see if there's any questions about al-hukm al-wada'i. If there is any, I'll try to address, inshallah, or there's any comment.
I pasted two. If you can address those, and I'll look for other ones. I'll check the other.
Okay. See, there's a problem here that I cannot see that unless I stop this sharing. So I'm going to stop the sharing then. I just have to figure out how this Zoom works. Okay, chat. Okay, here's the chat. Okay, why is it missing? I cannot see the chat anymore. I guess, okay, the question is, what is a sin? Sin means disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is considered as a sin. Any command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are, if we are not fulfilling the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether it's amr or nahi, meaning it's a command to do an action and we don't fulfill that action, or, and again, it goes back to if it's a talab jazim, if it's a decisive hukum from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do an action and a person does not commit it, then it will be considered as a sin. And similarly, if a person who is if a command is the talab jazim is there, meaning there's a request of not doing an action, a prohibition is there, which is in a decisive manner, which comes under the category of the haram, then if the person commits the haram, it will be considered as a sin. Okay. So in other words, action done or not done, which are punishable from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. Since there is no zawal in some parts of Alaska in winter time, does it mean dhuhr and onwards salah and are not fard in the region? Should they pray only Isha and Fajr? No. In those cases, actually, there are rulings regarding that you go by the closest place where they have the sunrise and sunset, and you follow their times, calculate the time accordingly, and do it according to that. And same thing will go for the fasting as well. Will you make these notes available for us to review? Jazakallah. Inshallah, I will make those notes available also. Yes. Okay, I'll try to make the slides ahead of time, inshallah, so it will be useful also to go by the slides, because there's a lot of terminologies we are talking about here. Are there any more questions or no?
No, that was it.
Okay, then we'll stop here, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام. جزاكم الله خير.